Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'll read a little from Krishna book, the delivering the wives of the Brahmins. I think it's chapter 22. A few more mantras. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I offered to bring buckwheat chapatis to a reading of Chaitanya, a gathering where the devotees are going to read, chant and read Chaitanya Charitamrita, and everyone's going to bring something. So it's a Ekadasi, so I'll bring buckwheat chapatis, no problem, right? I never made buckwheat chapatis. Well, how hard can it be? Just get a recipe and make them, right? Okay, so I found it was just buckwheat, flour, water, and a little salt, right? No. I spent hours today trying to get this buckwheat chapati thing off the ground. For one thing, buckwheat isn't a grain, it's actually a fruit, but it's dried, evidently dried and ground into a flour. Because on Ekadasi, you fast from grains like wheat and beans. And a lot of other things too. A lot of different spices, a lot of vegetables are not offerable on Ekadasi. And the idea behind the restrictions on the food is to have things that are very light, digestible and light, so that it leaves consciousness clear, more clear for more hearing and chanting. So I got the buckwheat flour out and the water and the salt, and then I was reading up on it a little bit. It's very sticky. When you make the dough, the buckwheat dough, it's very sticky. So in order to roll it into the little patties, to make the chapatis, it has to be rolled in a damp cloth. In other words, you got a damp towel or cloth, and you put it and you roll it, and then, because if you try and do it on the surface of a table, it just sticks, it won't come up. And it sticks to the rolling pin and it's sticky. So you roll it inside this cloth. And then buckwheat doesn't have any gluten in it, so it doesn't hold together. So you have to add something, and it was recommended potato. So I put in the food processor the potato, added a little water, and So then okay, great, we got our flour. Go ahead, roll it in the cloth, put it on the pan, make the chapati. So bitter, you could die. I mean, they came out so, buckwheat tends to be bitter. It can be very bitter. This was so bitter. I mean, that was like almost 8 hours ago, and I can still feel the bitterness. I mean, they were really bitter. Terrible. Just awful. This is So then I do a little more research. Well, why is it bitter? And it says, yeah, buckwheat is bitter. Even buckwheat pancakes or whatever you make with buckwheat, it can be very bitter. So you have to add something, either lemon juice or apple juice. And then they listed a whole bunch of things you have to add. And you put in baking soda. So I didn't see the baking soda part. So I have some apples. So I did another bunch of flour, another dough with the potato and apple. Bitter as anything, you could die. It was so bitter. But that was enough. That was a couple hours, and that's enough. The gathering's on Sunday. It's only Wednesday. I hate to be defeated and just say, forget the buckwheat chapatis. I'll bring something else. But I don't like to quit. I want to get it right. So I'm going to try again tomorrow with these buckwheat chapatis. And try adding, instead of apple, do lemon juice and baking soda, and see if we can't get this where it's supposed to be. It's frustrating, Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. I just bring nuts and raisins. Baked sweet potato. I mean, why do I have to pick something like buckwheat chapatis? What do I have to do that for? Make it complicated. Make baked sweet potato or nuts and raisins, and just tapioca pudding, something easy. Buckwheat chapatis. Oh man. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare. Well, I'll try tomorrow. If it doesn't come out tomorrow, forget it. It's nuts and raisins. See you later. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So read a little Krishna book. No TV, no movies. Krishna book. Jai Raja Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Palaka Yivaritari Yasoda Nandana Yasishana Randana Yamuna Tira Manachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama. Delivering the wives of the Brahmanas. This is summary study of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's by Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So Krishna, little friends, cowherd boys, they were advised by Krishna to approach some Brahmins who were preparing for a sacrifice nearby and to ask for some foodstuffs because the boys said they were hungry. And the Brahmins ignored the boys because they weren't particularly interested in Krishna and Balaram. They were more interested in performing a sacrifice, go to the heavenly planets, higher planets. So when the boys came and they asked, they ignored them. The Brahmanas were very interested in the comforts of this material body and in elevation to the higher planetary residences called Swarga Vas. They were therefore completely unable to understand the position of Krishna. When the boys saw that the Brahmanas would not speak to them, they became very disappointed. They then returned to Lord Krishna and Balaram and explained everything that had happened. After hearing their statements, the Supreme Personality began to smile. He told them they should not be sorry for being refused by the Brahmanas because that's the way of begging. He convinced them that while one is engaged in collecting or begging, one should not think that he will be successful everywhere. He may be unsuccessful in some places, but that should not be a cause for disappointment. Lord Krishna then asked all the boys to go again, but this time to the wives of those Brahmanas engaged in sacrifices. He also informed them that these wives were great devotees. They are always absorbed in thinking of us. Go there and ask for some food in my name and the name of Balaram, and I am sure they will deliver it to you, as much food as you desire. Carrying out Krishna's order, the boys immediately went to the wives of the Brahmanas. They found the wives sitting inside their house. They were very beautifully decorated with ornaments. After offering them all respectful obeisances, the boys said, "Dear mothers, please accept our humble obeisances and hear our statement. May we inform you that Lord Krishna and Balaram are nearby. They have come here with the cows, and you may know also that we have come here under their instructions. All of us are very hungry. Therefore, we have come to you for some food. Please give us something to eat for Krishna, Balaram, and ourselves." Immediately upon hearing this, the wives of the Brahmanas became anxious for Krishna and Balaram. Their reactions were spontaneous. They did not have to be convinced of the importance of Krishna and Balaram. Immediately upon hearing their names, they became very anxious to see them. Being advanced by thinking of Krishna constantly, they were performing the greatest form of mystic meditation. All the wives then became very busily engaged in filling up different pots with nice food stuff. Due to the performance of the sacrifice, the various food was all very palatable. After collecting a feast, they prepared to go to Krishna, their most lovable object, exactly in the way rivers flow to the sea. For a long time, the wives had been anxious to see Krishna. However, when they were preparing to leave home to go to him, their husbands, fathers, sons, and relatives asked them not to go. But the wives did not comply. When a devotee is called by the attraction of Krishna, he does not care for bodily ties. The women entered the forest of Vrindavan on the bank of the Yamuna, which was verdant with vegetation and newly grown vines and flowers. Within that forest they saw Krishna and Balaram engaged in tending the cows, along with their very affectionate boyfriends. The Brahmana's wife saw Krishna putting on a garment glittering like gold. He wore a nice garland of forest flowers and a peacock feather on his head. He was also painted with the minerals found in Vrindavan, and he looked exactly like a dancing actor on a theatrical stage. They saw him keeping one hand on the shoulder of his friend, and in his other hand he was holding a lotus flower. His ears were decorated with lilies. He wore marks of tilak, and he was smiling charmingly. With their very eyes, the wives of the Brahmanas saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead, of whom they had heard so much, who was so dear to them, and in whom their minds were always absorbed. Now they saw him eye to eye and face to face, and Krishna entered within their hearts through their eyes. They began to embrace Krishna to their heart's content, and the distress of separation was mitigated immediately. They were just like great sages who, by their advancement of knowledge, merge into the existence of the Supreme. As the super soul living in everyone's heart, Lord Krishna could understand their minds. They had come to him despite all the protests of their relatives, fathers, husbands, brothers, and all the duties of household affairs. They came just to see him, who was their life and soul. They were actually following Krishna's instruction in the Bhagavad Gita. One should surrender to him, giving up all varieties of occupational and religious duties. The wives of the Brahmanas actually carried out the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita in total. He therefore began to speak to them, smiling very magnificently. It should be noted in this connection that when Krishna entered into the wives' hearts, and when they embraced him and felt the transcendental bliss of being merged with him, the Supreme Lord Krishna did not lose his identity, nor did the individual wives lose theirs. The individuality of both the Lord and the wives remained, yet they felt oneness in existence. When a lover submits to his lover without any pinch of personal consideration, that's called oneness. Lord Chaitanya has taught us this feeling of oneness in his Shikshastika. Krishna may act freely, doing whatever he likes, but the devotee should always be in oneness or in agreement with his desires. That oneness was exhibited by the wives of the Brahmanas in their love for Krishna. Krishna welcomed them with the following words. My dear wives of the Brahmanas, you are all very fortunate and welcome here. Please, let me know what I can do for you. Your coming here, neglecting all the restrictions and hindrances of relatives, fathers, brothers, and husbands, in order to see me, is completely befitting. One should do this. One who does this actually knows his self-interest, because rendering transcendental loving service unto me without motive or restriction is actually auspicious for the living entities. Lord Krishna here confirms that the highest perfectional stage of the conditional soul is to surrender to him. One must give up all other responsibilities. This complete surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the most auspicious path for the conditioned soul, because the Supreme Lord is the supreme object of love. Everyone is loving Krishna ultimately, but realization is according to the advancement of his knowledge. One comes to understand that his self is the spirit soul, and the spirit soul is nothing but a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, the Supreme Lord is the ultimate goal of love, and thus one should surrender unto him. This surrender is considered auspicious for the conditioned soul. Our life, property, home, wife, children, house, country, society, all paraphernalia, which are very dear to us, are expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is the central object of love because he gives us all bliss, expanding himself in so many ways according to our different situations, namely bodily, mental, or spiritual. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So Krishna will continue talking to the wives. You don't see here that the wives offered so many prayers. It doesn't say that they offered prayers at all. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare